Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. It's nice to have you guys here for the drama panel. I wish we could have done it the way you guys were set up there, like just talking while you're like this. I'm gonna try to like turn as best I can. I guess I wanna first start, covering TV, I'm often having conversations with my colleagues about all that's going on and all that's changing. I guess I sort of want to throw it out there. What do you find fascinating about the current state of TV? Is it the way people are watching, like in any type of device? Is it the amount of time they're willing to spend watching, like over the weekend, like they'll sit 12 hours sometimes? Or is it the way that they're engaging on social media? What do you find interesting right now?
I think the word binge coming into our lexicon is a really great thing. You know, I think that's, people say, on the street, they go, I binged watched you last night. And it's sort of a weird new verb. I like that. But I'm most excited about the fact that there are so many options and so many channels and so many ways to stream and see things that when people are passionate about something, they really let you know because you might not have heard of it. And I think that's people are talking about things when they really, really like them and really engage with them. Whereas before, I think you could always assume that people would know things that you were really excited about. So I like that. I think more choice is good.
And social media, because that's where I find a lot of shows. Like, you know, I heard of a House of Cards, of course, but then when I saw people talking about it on my timeline, it made me go, whoa, what's this? And then I watched it and I was hooked.
Did you binge watch?
I did.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can watch television because I never have time to sit down and catch an episode of anything. So it's a great way to sit and catch up and not have to wait in like the agony of what's gonna happen next. You can just watch the entire series in one sitting with a bottle of wine.
With a bottle of wine.
Are we starting to lose our ability to put off short-term gratification though? Like the idea of waiting now another week to watch a show, I've always hated that, but maybe it's good that you hate that. Maybe it's good to kind of not have to. Now you can just plow through. I don't know, I mean, I love it. I'm the same as you. Like, I just want to keep going with something, but I wonder what that's doing to us internally now.
Because that's how you watched the first season of Masters of Sex, right? Didn't you sit down and try to take it all in?
Yeah, I just watched all 12 hours of it in 2 days or something, and it really, you know, I think that reinforced the idea that I've heard people saying that a whole season of a TV show now is like making a 12-hour film if it's a 12-episode thing, and it did reinforce that in me. So then when I came to do the other seasons, I'm sort of thinking of it like that more. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
How about, you know, I talked to some directors and showrunners just how it sort of changes their process, knowing people are sitting down with it and sometimes watching 5 or 6 episodes, like and the way they're watching, like sometimes they're watching on a phone, so does it change the amount of clutter that's on screen when you're directing, knowing that people are watching it smaller, and some say, yeah, they try to streamline. For you as actors, does it change the way you're sort of taking on the character? Like, do you feel like you need to be more subtle with some of your choices, knowing people are gonna be with it for a much longer time, or do you feel like you have to remember what happened in like 7 episodes because people are gonna like sort of remember? I don't know if it does it.
Try and do very tiny gestures because if I'm on a tiny phone.
I think
Never
subtleties.
know.
That's true.
I think subtleties
even
are
thought
overrated.
of that.
Yeah, I never.
Now I'm gonna worry.
Now I'm all confused now.
But actually, when you know people are going to watch it on their phones, you do everything real big.
How you like headbutt the camera.
But this interesting thing about connecting the dots. I didn't think about it because of binge watching. I just thought about it as a series overall because, you know, when you get finally the 12 episodes or however many episodes in the can, it really does play like one big movie, you know, so I do keep that in mind. Well, I'll bring up something that was in episode 3. I'll bring it up again in episode 12 just to connect the dots. But I never thought about it like that. So that's my excuse. Yeah, I came up with that because of this binge watching.
Well, I would imagine, like, you're talking about social media, Taraji, and like with your show, part of, it seems to me from the outside of it, part of the excitement for people is kind of just the reaction to what happened. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And so having the gap is really important in a way, you know, for social media, people to exchange their ideas about it and get really excited about it. Whereas if everyone just watched it all in one go, they wouldn't have that opportunity in a way with a show like yours. I imagine that's part of what's exciting about it.
Well, if it's appointment TV, if you have to sit down and catch it, well, then the thing is that if you are heavily involved in social media, then it becomes, oh, I don't want to miss it. I don't want any spoilers. So you have to sit down and watch it. And then it's like, okay, I can join in on the conversation or the Twitterverse, you know. Yeah, social media has
I
definitely
don't like how
changed the
you,
game.
when you, people get really annoyed because of the time difference in this country.
Yeah.
That
I'm
they
one
say-
of those people.
Well,
Tell me why.
well,
Tell
like,
me why.
because they say like, you know, oh, you've got to live tweet the
Oh,
show,
yeah.
and you're live tweeting it, but it's not on yet, and sometimes, like on the Good Wife, it's always late because of the football.
Yes.
And so some people see it and other people, and people get really pissed off. I think, why aren't you watching the telly instead of looking at your Twitter? Oh, then why do you do live? I mean, it's also a terrible thing, I think, in a way, to say to an actor, would you please, whilst people are watching you in this episode, distract their attention by writing inane comments about what you did during the filming? It's a really, when you think of it, it's not very respectful to yourself. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, our show, I think, is in some ways quite sort of traditional, and you know, it looks quite sort of old school in certain ways, and I like to think of it in, like, my own taste is for something that has things threaded through the entire series, and you know, it does need concentration. You do need to focus on it. So I feel the same way with our particular show, that the idea of live tweeting and all that, no, just sit and watch it.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
It's kinda
But I think
hard
for
to
other
do.
shows, it's really great for it.
It's
I
hard to
live
do, and it
tweet
is a
anything
distraction.
for your show.
About our show. Thank you.
Well, you were saying it's hard. It's hard.
No,
to
it's
do.
hard to do because you can't keep up with all the tweets, and you know, it's really hard to do because you're actually trying to watch it, and then it's like, oh yeah, what was I going through in that scene? Yeah, that's the scene I was really sick. I had diarrhea. You know, it's like
You guys tweet while you're watching?
So, no, it's not like as a rule, but sometimes they say, like, if it's
Yeah.
the first night of the season, they press people,
those people
ask
over
you
there.
to do a live tweet. So you like tweet going like, oh, this is this scene. Oh, look at my hair, and then you know, oh, this is
I
the bit when
see.
blah blah. So
Just to
that's like,
interact with
it's
the
becoming like a thing, a press thing, on certain episodes, and sometimes people just do it just for themselves. I mean, just do it anyway.
Well, and it must be hard with a Netflix show because there's not a set schedule where you know everyone's around it, but you're not on Twitter like watching how people are responding to it, right?
Right.
Smart woman, stay away.
So they just on Netflix they release all of them at once. There's
Yeah,
like a
I was
set
going to
one day.
watch it 2 at a time, so it'd be like a feature. You know,
Right,
watching
yeah.
it each day, I watched it all in one day.
Yeah.
I completely binge watched. I like
that's-
binge watching.
Me too.
It's good.
And do you think then people will watch it, more likely to watch it again because of they can get it all at once?
I don't know. You know, it's kind of a phenomenon. It just
Yeah.
It just sucks you in.
Yeah.
Binge watching is like you can binge watch and binge eat at the same time. Fabulous.
One of the things I find, what you were saying about, you know, what's exciting about where things are at the moment is that it appears to me, maybe I'm being naive about it, but it appears to me like in the same way as cinema in the 70s, you know, in America certainly got to a point where the people who were in charge were like, we don't really know what works.
Right.
Things are really working well and we can't anticipate it, so okay, go and do that. And
Right.
it feels a little bit like that with TV, where you've got people like Louis, for instance, supposedly making a comedy that's not a comedy a lot of the time, and people really react to it, and different shows with different formats, like, you know, True Detective or Fargo, where it's like a one-off season, but there's going to be another season, but you know, it's everything's being shaken up, and no one can really anticipate what's going to
Right.
take off and what's not. Releasing an entire season all in one go, like on Netflix. So I find that really exciting because the form is changing, the way people access the form is changing, and that's affecting the content of things
Right.
as well. And that's when you get really exciting things
It's a
happening.
very responsive sort of medium. Yeah. Taraji, I mean, you came from Person of Interest, and people were sort of up in arms about the death of Carter. And it was it was like 22 episodes season, right? Like
Yeah.
Person of Interest.
And
So,
I think I bit the bullet in the 9th episode. I think.
but talk a little bit about, you know, the decision. Like, were you hesitant about jumping back into a show? And
Yeah,
did
I
was
didn't
there
want to do
appeal?
television anymore. I felt trapped on TV. TV is a
Right.
different animal. You know, when you come from the feature world where you have, You know, you take one day to do 2 scenes, you know, and television, they're like 10 pages. It's like, wait a minute, it's all coming at you so fast. And it's like, we got it. And it's like, wait a minute, can I explore that beat a little more, you know? So it was just odd. But I'm glad I did it, you know, and particularly a show like Person of Interest, because it's a special rhythm, you know. You have to say the words exactly the way they're written on the page, you know, and so it keeps you in a certain rhythm, you know. It kind of throws you off, but in a good way because it's a challenge. But yeah, I liked it, and I enjoyed that we shook television up a bit because people weren't expecting that. And I think sometimes TV can be a bit safe, don't you think? Like the good guy is saved and the bad guy goes to jail. Well, you know, life is messy. It doesn't happen that way in real life, and you know, sometimes the good guy gets it. And I think that's why people still mourn her death, because they just never saw it coming.
But shows like Sopranos shook that up, didn't they?
Absolutely.
You've got a guy who's the head of a mob who's a very
But that's
conflicted
HBO.
character.
You know, anything is expected. I'm talking about primetime network
right.
television, where always the good guy saves the day and the bad guy goes to jail. That's so not life.
But talk about making the leap then to something like Empire, which really shook things up.
Yeah, I didn't read that script for weeks. I was doing a play at the Pasadena Playhouse. I was done with television. And my manager was like, I said, didn't I tell you I didn't want to do television? So then I sit down and I read it. The Fox execs actually started driving out to Pasadena. Who goes to... I was like, okay, I'll read the script. I sat down the first night and I was like, hip hop, this is stupid. This is gonna be, oh my God. And it scared the life out of me. And I was like, you know, Fox, okay, we'll probably put this incredible pilot in the can, and they'll probably put it on they'll choke at the last minute and put it on one of the cable networks. And they picked it up, and I was like, we're gonna piss off a lot of people. Yeah, but you know, I like taking risks, and that was a definite risk that worked. You know, that's what art is about. It shouldn't be safe.
But is it bittersweet too, because as much as sort of the press sort of rallied around it and sort of, you said, look at what's happening, like people are, like it's growing week to week, this is unheard of. Is it also kind of like, that makes the scrutiny all the more like inevitable when things sort of settle in? Are you sort of hesitant about how that's gonna be?
No, I'm a risk taker. I'm not afraid of much. I mean, I believe in these characters. I believe in the script. I believe in the story. And I'm passionate about it. So what I do know is that you can't please everybody. That's just life. Everybody doesn't like me as a person. I know everybody doesn't like the show. So, you know, you take the good with the bad and you just keep moving, and you just pray that the work you're doing is effective and touching and moving people. That's all I can hope for.
Well, and Ellen, I think you're the only one here that's on a show that's like 22 episode seasons.
God bless you.
Yeah, still alive.
And I mean, you came from Desperate Housewives. You know what the drill is like. Talk about, I mean, are you sort of jealous of the people that have like the shorter seasons?
Oh,
and
yes.
what was it like for you, the jump?
I am. Like
Yeah.
Michael was saying earlier about you do it for 4.5 months. And also you get a bit long, like I was talking to Lena Dunham the other day about, you know, how long they get to shoot an episode of Girls and things like that. Just in terms of, I mean, for doing it, it's like 9 months of the year. And it's a long commitment, and it's a lot. I mean, and also, I mean, I am not in the show that much, so I do have time off, and it's actually I'm able to do other things. But you still have that time of your life that you have to give over, and it's a lot actually when it's like, you know, 3/4 of your year for many years. So that when you hear of oh yes, you know, I'm on an HBO show, only 6 months. Oh, how many pages a day? We do 3, things like that. But you know, I actually have really enjoyed. I think The Good Wife's really well written. Has maintained. It's on its 6th season, I think.
6th season, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, and it's still, you know, has. I really like it, and I'm really excited to get the next each script that comes in. And I think like what Michael's saying, I think we're living in a sort of golden age of television right now, that because there are so many different ways to see things and so many different, you know, there's all these different niches, everyone can find something they like. So actually it means that we're not so fed the same stuff all the time. And that's actually really exciting because, you know, even within The Good Wife, what I really like about it is it sort of moral ambivalence. That thing you're talking about, that some, like, you know, now Juliana's character starting to be a bit of a bitch.
Yeah.
And so,
You said
know,
it, I didn't.
And she's, and I love that way that the kind of it doesn't tell the audience what to think. And I think a lot of television in the past, until this kind of renaissance that we're all a part of now, told people what to think. And now you're challenged and you have to make up your own. And sometimes people you hate, you suddenly are sympathetic towards, and sometimes the lady that you think is she's the good wife suddenly is doing things. You're like, what the hell's going on here? So I think it's more exciting as a performer to be in something like that is not just corresponding to kind of old patriarchal ideas of what it should be like.
Felicity, how did you make with the transition, and do you sort of wish you had more time to explore Barb, or is this the right amount of episodes to
I
be with
liked
her?
11 episodes. I liked 4 months. It was sweet. You could get it done. I don't have to go back. No, I'm okay saying goodbye to Barb. I mean, she's a noble woman, but you don't want to have dinner with her.
How was it getting into that mind frame where, she has these sort of bigot kind beliefs, but she's not like a hard and fast sort of bigot? Talk about being in that and trying to understand where she was coming from.
I think she's a racist, not a bigot. Whenever I talk about acting, I can see the will to live just leave people's bodies. So, so forgive me, and I'll make it short. You always have to find something that you endorse. So no, I didn't play her like a racist. I played her like a mother who's trying to take care of her son, which indeed she is. So I say her motives are noble, but how it manifests is somewhat questionable. So I tried to hew to that line so it looked like she was driven towards something as opposed to just being unpleasant.
Michael, do you sort of relate to that given Mr. Masters?
Yeah, I sort of perversely decided that I was going to try and play the most unlikable character on TV and see if people could still empathize. And I thought, and that was part of what was exciting about the project, and also the fact that he's not just, the main character. There's, two main characters that kind of balance it out.
But they had wanted to make him a little bit warmer, right? And you pushed
and I
against
resisted it
Yeah.
every step of the way. Well, I just wanted to, I wanted to see. I thought that the way the form was going on TV, the nature of the episodic way of telling the story allowed for a greater complexity, and I wanted to see how far I could go with that, and whether an audience would go with it. And given that the character is a real person, and when I was reading about his real life, you kind of come across the fact that he used to have the shit beaten out of him by his father randomly, and so kind of go, well, I'm gonna take this on. I really want to do this, and if we're gonna tell a story about a man who is a difficult man, and there are very real reasons for why he's a difficult man, then I really want to go on that journey. I don't want to do shortcuts. I don't want to, if it's going to be about a man who changes over time, then I want to really do this journey, because we're at a moment where you can, and so I wanted to try and do that. And that's been hard, because people then come up to you and go, he's such a your character. He's such a I don't want to get into like, yeah, well, actually, he's been abused. You say that about everyone who's been abused? I'm sorry, but I get, you get personally involved, because I don't, I've said this a lot, but I don't play anyone else. I play me. I play different versions of me, or me in different circumstances, but it's me. If you come up and tell me my character's a dick, you're telling me I'm a dick, and I will punch you for it. No, but, that's it. I get very worked up about it. So
He gets like Cookie.
yeah, but,
Carry a broom.
yeah.
Well, episode 3 of this season was sort of a turning point in the way I viewed Masters. Was it a turning point for the way you sort of viewed him too? Because, it's this like incredible episode where so much of it is taking place in a hotel room, and you guys are both in bathrobes, and you're
it's pretty much in real time. It's like a play, really.
And you're revealing yourself in sort of role playing, and this is where we're learning the most that we've ever known, sort of, about his backstory.
Well, I resisted giving too much away about who he is. It's like I used to talk about it like the shark in Jaws. As soon as you see the shark, the game's over, it's done. But if you are aware that there's something under the water and you don't quite know what it is, hopefully it's compelling. And so part of what I did in the whole of season 1 was to not show the shark. Didn't want to show the shark. and then when we did come to kind of show a bit more of what was going on in that particular episode, I was so scared of like, if you give away my secrets, like that's the engine of what I'm doing, and if we give too much away, and everyone was like, no, we can do more than that, and I was pulling back, but I think it worked all right. But then you have to kind of go, okay, well, where does he go now? How do we move on? If that's not what's motivating everything now, then how do we move on from that? And that's what, we've just started the new season, and discovering who a man is when certain things that have been terrifying him. I mean, the big motivation for me, part of why people think he's such a is because the way he is with his kids, and he's terrified he's going to do to his own kids what was done to him. And so, but that looks like just a horrible man who's not a very good parent, and that's a big thing of what we're exploring in this season.
Well, you mentioned like some of the pushback that you've had to do, and that sort of brings up the topic of the relationships that you sort of forge with the showrunners and the people behind the scenes, the writers who are sort of crafting where your character goes. Do you feel like you can tell John, I don't know about this, I don't know if this is something she would do, or do you feel like you could tell Robert and Michelle, I don't know if Eli would do this, or I want him to do this instead, or?
I mean, I feel like I could do that. I mean, they're very open to hearing things, but I mean, in all the episodes I've done, I think I've only written back an email a couple of times to go, this is crazy, this is the best episode, or
I want to know which
or
one.
remember in season 2 I said blah blah, but tiny things. But I do think, I mean, what I think is quite good about The Good Wife, well, there's a lot of things I think are quite good about The Good Wife, but it is that the writer's room is in Los Angeles and we shoot it in New York, and so I think that's a healthy distance, because I think everyone leaves each other to get on with things, their forte, and actually, of course, you communicate and things like that, but it's not, I can't imagine what it would be like to have the writers right there. I've never done this is the only kind of TV series I've done in America, and so I don't know what that's like when the writers are in your face all the time. I mean, I think it's all right when they're good writers, but I imagine it's also difficult on a long-running show because people come into it, and you've done it from the beginning, and you know a lot about. I find that weird with directors actually, that doing films, you're looking to the director to kind of know more about it than you do, about the characters, and then something on TV you know more about it because these are new people and they haven't seen all the episodes and don't know the storyline. So it's an interesting kind of change. But in terms of the writing, I think the Kings who do The Good Wife are so lovely and so clever and open, and always open to hearing things. But I actually trust them implicitly. I just, as I say, I really look forward to seeing what's going to happen.
Taraji?
I'm very vocal.
Yeah.
I mean, for the first time, this show, Empire, and the structure and the environment on the set really made me fall in love with TV. I mean, like, it's an actor's playground. I mean, we have freedom to say, because at the end of the day, you have a group of writers and they have all the characters on their brain, right? I live, eat, sleep Cookie all season. No one knows Cookie better than me. Like, I wrote her backstory. I give them ideas. Oh, this is why Portia, that's why she chose Portia to be her assistant. They'll give it to me. And then I write the backstory. And so, they trust me because a lot of the zany one-liners are straight from me, because that's the homework I did. I know her so well. And it's just beautiful because when you're free, you're uninhibited. And when you're uninhibited, then you get to create these zany one-liners that people are going crazy about. But when you can't, it's like you second guess yourself and it almost feels robotic, And I understand that everybody has their place. I'm not a lazy actor where I'll read the line and go, I can say it better, I'll say it like this. No, I first try to make it work. Or if it doesn't make sense, I'm like, maybe she would say it like this. Or sometimes Cookie would never even say that. She'll just do a look, So I'm happy. It's like an actor's playground. It's beautiful. The process is amazing.
Well, with the exception of Alan's show, The Good Wife, all of these dramas are sort of taped in advance before, like you're not shooting while people are sort of watching. It's sort of locked and loaded. Felicity, what was that like because you come from Desperate Housewives, when people, and sometimes it can change storylines a little bit. What was it like to sort of just have it all there and not have to worry about any change with scripts and stuff like that.
I love that. It's like a little golden cradle from making it to when people see it. It's sort of like being in a play and rehearsal. I would prefer never to go up in front of an audience. I just want to be in rehearsal the whole time. So I liked it. You're just in your bubble, and ABC was really ballsy and left John Ridley to do what he wanted to do, and we didn't have to clear anything. I mean, you know, usually with network, they're like, what do you mean you're wearing a gray suit? I have to check that.
Right.
But they left us completely alone and backed us 100%, and so I loved it.
Yeah. Do you guys prefer that too?
Well, I love being able to be completely immersed in the world. Like you say, you know, you eat and sleep it and just be in that world, and I find that very creative. I love having the writers there. I mean, on this at least, you know, and like I've even asked now to have someone who can go between the writer's room and the set, because I've found that, you know, discovering things in scenes, you make discoveries as an actor, you know, and to be able to feed that back in immediately to like the next episode potentially, and having that dialogue going on, that is really creative. I love that. So the more immersed in it you are, and I suppose in some ways, if it is going out week to week, that you've got reaction coming back, but I don't want to know about the outside world. I just want to be in that world. That's what I love doing.
And Sissy, you've been on TV shows before, but Bloodline was sort of the first time you were there from the beginning and were there for the ride of the journey. How was that for you?
I call it the year of not knowing. It was an interesting experience, not knowing where the character was going. You know, you
That's
couldn't
what's
play the
scary.
result. That was one good thing. I remember when I finally saw it, I thought, oh, that's what it's about. It was a completely new experience for me. I loved it. I think one of the things I loved the most was developing these deep relationships with the other actors. I'd never experienced that before, and I loved that. And I look forward to next year thinking, okay, now I kind of understand sort of what's happening, but I find this all very interesting. I'm thinking, okay, make a note of that. I can use these things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned family. A lot of these shows deal with the family bond, and you know that's sort of a crucial element for a lot of these characters too. How do you sort of develop that bond so it feels like you've known these people all your lives when you're in front of the camera? Are there dinners that happen before you start shooting, or what?
I started touching a lot because I looked
started
around at
touching a
this
lot?
room full of adult people thinking, I gave birth to all of these people. I need to touch them.
You're busy.
A lot of touching, yes.
A lot of touching.
When you stood in front of someone in a hotel room and stripped off naked completely and then masturbated in front of them, you
Wow.
get pretty close pretty quick.
I can
what I
understand
found.
that. Yeah.
And what about
You
the
must
show
have
though,
found that too,
Michael?
Felicity.
That's why I don't want an audience, but yes.
Well, and there's a lot of like turmoil and like a lot of, you know, conflict within Barb's family, and how is it sort of getting there and feeling that?
I had to actually really concentrate on that one, and I didn't end up talking to anyone. And the DP on American Crime thought Timothy Hutton and I hated each other because he never actually saw us talking. And although it wasn't exactly method, it was just I just had to concentrate that hard, so I couldn't go from chatty to the scene. So it was a lonely experience.
How about, you guys talked a lot about theater back there, and we've talked about film, coming from the film world.
Back by the pool.
Back
Yeah,
by
back
the
there.
pool, yes.
Spa.
Yes. This weird this here in the desert.
It's like the Flintstones.
But how do you think your characters would have worked on stage or in film the way they do on TV?
Yes, would you be masturbating on stage, Michael?
I mean, that's just
I would pay to see that live.
vision between my screen life and my program. Oh, God, that's a really difficult question. I don't know. Does anyone have anything to work in the theatre?
Well, I think in a way, in The Good Wife, my sort of storyline is quite theatrical, and you know, in terms of the political shenanigans and the backstabbing and things. So I guess there's parallels to theatre stories there. I don't know. I mean, I think I think actually in a way, having done it for so long now, I think that probably the difference is, we're going into our 7th season, so that's a shitload of episodes. That actually it becomes this kind of like, you know, like when Dickens used to like write little serials in the newspaper, and then they became a big book. That's what I kind of feel The Good Wife's like. It kind of has these, and I suppose network television is like that. You just go on and on and on, and it's a thing of it's a very peculiar thing of itself, and that's why when they end, I'm really intrigued actually about when Desperate Housewives ended. How did they end? How did they end it? And did you know it was going to end? Because I'm really fascinated. Like we thought it was going to end actually last season, and then it didn't, and now it's got this new burst of life, and I think it's really interesting how the audience deals with that and how the people inside it deal with it, because obviously it can't last forever.
Yeah. We did know it was ending.
You did?
And so Mark Cherry built it out. At the season 8, he knew it was ending, so he worked backwards because he knew how he wanted to end it. And it was, I could have done Desperate Housewives forever. You don't have much of a life with 22, 23 episodes, but it's like doing a little one-act play every week, and you sort of suck a little bit, and then you go, I didn't do too bad in that scene, and you get to try it again. I just love the flow of it all. But the end was bittersweet. You're like, oh, it's the last time I'm going to put makeup on in the trailer, and
Did you
last
die?
time I'm going to get this paycheck.
Did you die?
I didn't die. Thanks for knowing my work.
How would you like? What would you like Eli's story like to sort of finish off out?
Well,
Have you started thinking about it?
Yes, I've actually thought about Eli dying a lot over the years,
dying.
but Lee not being in the show. Yeah, because every year when if it's not picked up when by the time you finish, you think that might be it.
Right.
But usually, But no, I actually think what is going to happen next season is really it's actually.
Tell us.
I couldn't possibly. No, I think where it's going is actually how I think Eli. Eli has grand ambitions for Peter's character, and that's what I think I like about in the story with Juliana and I. We both want to. We both have our man. It's the same man, and we both want him to do things. And that's why it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because we both, I guess, want him to do different things. So we're all kind of manipulating each other. So I think if it goes the way they're planning, Eli's going to be very happy next season.
Is America Ferrara coming back?
I hope so. He needs to get some sex. Not had sex for a couple of seasons, and I'm a good actor and all, but.
Well, you mentioned how Good Wife is currently in the 6th season, and people were sort of amazed at how they were able to sort of bring, with season 5, really go full throttle and bring so much attention and renewed interest in the show. Were you sort of, once that ended and heading into season 6, were you like, how are we going to keep this momentum going?
I guess. I think you can't really think in that way. I think obviously season 5 was such a big thing. It really, the whole show kind of took a big upward curve in terms of the audience and just the kind of general where it's placed in the world. And then also, of course, Josh died.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Those of you who've not been binge watching. So I think when you have a big thing like that, obviously there's a natural feeling you're going to go down a wee bit again. But I don't think it's necessarily my place to worry too much about those things. I think actually you just have to. There's a lot of trust, I think, in a long-running TV show. And especially as you get more involved with the character, there's more at stake for you personally. But I really do trust the people that make this show. I think they're really great.
Well, when you've woken up in the morning and you're still yourself, but you're getting ready to go to set, and it's time to get into that character, what helps you get into the mind of Barb or, Masters? Like, is it the glasses, the wig, just putting on the coat, or what helps you get into that character?
Paycheck.
Do you wear a wig?
Happy.
I like to kick baby birds. Do you wear a wig? Are you wearing a wig now? Wonderful. No, take the question. I don't want the question.
For the first 2 seasons, I realized that, for the period of time that you're playing your character, I was the character more than I was myself. So it started to kind of become slightly blended, and I remember thinking, I'm really not a nice person. People on this set really don't think I'm a nice person, and I'm a nice person. But I was spending so much time as the character, I guess, and so I think for me, he has a real uniform. He has the bow tie, and so as soon as you start, and the hair and all that, I'd look so not like myself. I think when I'm playing the character, that just that process sort of helps. I think.
Yeah. Taraji?
Yeah, definitely the furs. I'm not a fur person. I don't do furs. I'm just not interested in dead animals on me. But
Good for you.
yeah, but I don't judge my characters. So for me, it's definitely the costume because she wears a lot of jewelry and a lot of leopard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely the makeup and the wardrobe because it's so like bigger than life.
I feel.
Hair.
Yeah, I obviously have chopped all my hair off. I literally went from the last day of my last scene on The Good Difference season 6 was shooting on the steps of City Hall in New York, and I went straight. Normally I have to go to because they've been putting. I had black hair for when I was doing cabaret, and then they would put silver Sharpie.
Yeah.
In my silver Sharpie in my hair. They tried all these things. Had a wig. It lasted 3 episodes. It's up front, Emmy. The episode arc, and then they were, anyway, they when they came back, they said, "We found the perfect way for your hair to look like Eli's used to look." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yes, we tested it, and you're standing." And it was silver Sharpie in my hair. So every scene for the last 10 episodes, when they do last looks, they come in. I'm high on Sharpie scenes.
And it really works?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and except when they make a mistake and I've got a big silver mark on my head. No, but so that was what I normally have to go to the makeup trailer and get all the Sharpie washed out.
It washes out?
With a special, with a special, they have to put this dry stuff in and blah. It's a nightmare. But anyway, so I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this again next season, I'm going to go back to my real, salt and pepper. So I went straight from the set to the barber's with the Sharpie still in my hair, and there's big piled lumps of it. It's really long. But I feel so alien to my character. I mean, I obviously look a bit like him, but aside from that, we physically and politically and well, not politically, we're kind of on the same. We have different. We have a different modus operandi, but I think we have the same, lefty leanings. But I just feel he's so completely his energy, and we're so different. So for me, I feel like it's like being a drag queen. I feel like when I put on Eli drag, and they do my hair all zhuzhy like that, and I'm very, I come with floppy clothes, and he's all tight and suits and things, and so it's very constricting, and I think and even his hair, his hair doesn't move, and I said there's a hole in the ozone layer above Brooklyn, above Greenpoint for all this
For all the hair
spray
products.
they put on it.
Yeah.
But I just feel it's actually a really great, someone who is so different to me. Yeah, I played for so long, I feel really comfortable and it's kind of easy, but it is very much about the external things and his whole look.
Sissy?
Definitely the heat and the mosquitoes.
The heat, yes.
And the location
Uh-huh.
of the Keys is really
That did it.
the thing that triggers it all. I realize I'm there. I'm in Florida when I wake up.
Which bit of the Keys is it? You shoot it in?
Isla Mirada, beautiful.
Yeah,
But we were there in the
in the heat of the summer.
the summer, and it was.
Yeah.
I was always looking for shade.
Yeah, well, pale people.
Was there a scene for you that sort of stood out that you sort of felt like was powerful for you in playing your character? Like,
oh yeah,
was
but they cut it out.
They did?
No,
Which
no,
one?
just
Oh.
kidding. Sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, like the scene where you find out Danny's dead, it was like, how many takes did that take to sort of...
So many, so many takes. Yeah, that was challenging after 10. It's all kind of a blur for me. I mean, I just took one day at a time. I didn't think of the overview, because in film, so much of it, you're planning. You're thinking, oh, I have got to do this here, I'm going to do that here. Oh, I didn't do that here, I'll do it here. And there's none of that. So I was just trying to be in the moment and watch what everybody else was doing.
Copy.
Alan, did you feel like Eli had a seminal moment this season? We see your daughter a lot.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
she's around a lot, yes.
which
So
is a
talking
good sight
seminal.
to see.
Thank you for that joke. Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I've actually not seen any of this season. Isn't that terrible?
That is terrible.
I'm going to binge watch, but I've not seen it. And then I would.
Remember acting it?
It's all a blur.
Yeah,
all a
so
blur.
many
It really is a
episodes.
blur, but I don't. And then I missed some, and things. I was off for some. I think in a way I'm actually really intrigued to watch it, in a bingey way, because I was always working this past year so much, and I didn't want to see it like when I was tired or blah blah blah. So, but there was one time I was upstate, and it was a Sunday, and it was on, and so I thought, oh, I'll actually watch it in real life, like when it's on TV.
Yeah.
And I switched on the telly and I got the time wrong. It was just, I thought it was on 10 o'clock, it's on at 9 o'clock. So I'm really bad. So I'm not too sure about this season. I think I've definitely felt like what I really enjoyed is the growing tension that Juliana's political career kind of vying against and I've been torn in a way. My character's been torn between his boss and he wants them to stay together for the political future of his boss, but also at the same time he's helping her have a political career. And I've really enjoyed that. I mean, if anything, he's got more tense and more.
Yes.
And I think he's had to work harder at manipulating. Juliana's not as easy to manipulate as or Alicia.
When it leads to angry Eli, which everyone loves.
Everyone loves it when he gets
Everyone
bitchy. I know.
loves angry Eli.
I know. I think it's funny. I see people make gifs of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, doing kind of like, faces and things. And I really enjoy those scenes. They're great to do. And it kind of remind me, actually, when he goes on a tirade, it's sort of like those old-fashioned films, like old, people don't speak that much. And I love telling people to shut up and things. And the way they shoot them, they get to do quite long takes, even though they, cut them. But it's good to get a good long slap at it. But I think in a way, if anything, Eli has, this year, his character has been more stressed. And so that's why I'm excited about next season, because if it all goes to plan.
Just tell us already.
I can't, I could get in such trouble. I've already got into trouble for.
Well, and Taraji, you get a lot of attention for like the crazy things Cookie does, or the crazy things she says, or like the big brawl she had. But do you prefer playing, like, what do you have most fun, playing those scenes or playing those quieter moments where we see her sort of raw and vulnerable?
Yeah, I think the quieter scenes, because it's all internal. It's easy to fight and when you're mad, but when you have to play those quiet moments, and you have to hide them from people, because humans really don't want other humans to see them at their most vulnerable. So that's where the real work comes in. So I kind of like using my eyes instead of words. And a lot of times I'll cut stuff out of this. I'll be like, I don't even have to say that. It's just a look. Just let me just do the look, And that's the great thing about the show, because it's not cable. We can't get away with using certain language, which makes it easier to land the line.
Right.
So you have to do work. You have to say it without saying it. So that's fun. It's challenging, and I like a challenge.
Michael.
Welcome to my world.
Oh, what's his name? What's his name?
We're on West Wing, right? Was there a scene with William Masters that stood out for you? Was it episode 3, or was there something else?
Well, there's episode 3, I guess people talked about a lot, but there was a similar kind of episode. Not that the whole episode was like that, but the closest thing to episode 3 was a scene much later on with my brother. Bill's brother comes into it, and I really remember that scene. That was a big thing, where we played a very long scene together that was a kind of climactic scene, and it brought a lot of things together for the character, for me, and brought out all his upness. And in order to prove his brother wrong about something that he knows his brother is right about, he turns his brother into a weapon and beats himself up with it. And all his, all his confusion about love and violence that he's learned through his relationship with his father and his family all gets played out in a scene where he ends the scene with just blood running down his face. And he's made his brother do it to him, knowing that his brother is an alcoholic, and he's pushed his brother to do. I mean, it's so messed up. And yet he ends the scene smiling with blood on his face and walks away from it, and then walks over and then goes to Virginia and says, "What is wrong with me? Why am I such a monster?" And so all his kind of messed upness and his vulnerability, and it was so kind of psychologically complicated, that scene, and how it managed to get to the point where it was all able to play out in a single scene. It was a long scene, and it was more like doing a play, I suppose, like episode 3 was. But I was so proud of what we had done as a show, as a story at that point, that you could have a scene that had so much going on in it in such a messed up kind of way. So that one really sort of stood.
And when you have a scene like that, are you trying to do it in as little of takes as possible because you don't want to be in it for so long, be in that mind space, or are you just willing to?
I think if you're kind of eating and sleeping it, and you get to a point where you actually get to express a lot of what you feel about it, then you're in the bubble and you just want to be there and you want to try and get it right, because you don't get many of those opportunities, so. But yeah, I think if you're doing big, long takes and it's a tough scene physically and it's going through lots of different sort of movements in it, then yeah, you don't want to be around it too long. But I don't want to let it go until. I mean, that's the other thing, talking about how many takes do you, when you've got to get through a lot of pages, and like when I leave here, I've got to go and do 8 pages of dialogue, and this afternoon. You've got to be kind of. Yeah.
No, that's so hard.
Felicity is opening in a play tonight. But you do have to be kind of. I find that I have to be disciplined with myself and go, I would like to do 10 more takes of this, but someone's going to suffer, or other scenes are going to suffer. So you've got to be careful about that kind of thing.
And Felicity, was there a scene that stood out? I mean, the parking garage, or?
Yeah, I think it's sort of bookended by a couple things. I think in episode 2, there's a scene where Barb has to ask for help from the wonderful actress Lily Taylor, and it's so hard that she can't do it without breaking down because it's vulnerable. And then actually in scene 8, which just aired, I think last night, I think through the series of events, the mirror is held up to her and she has to ask, am I a racist? Because she hasn't thought of herself as a racist.
Right.
She's thought of herself as a pragmatist and a realist. And then right after that scene, she goes and there's a scene where she buys a gun, and the way that she's looking at them, and she goes, I think I want a gun. It's just very deep, and I go, it's just so interesting how it's placed of, this makes me sound like I read, which I don't, but James Baldwin has this quote that says, he thinks the reason that people hold on to their prejudices so hard is because if they had to let them go, they'd be left with the pain. And when she's left with the pain, she might turn to violence. So that interests me. You like that I quoted him, didn't you?
I do.
Yeah.
No, I gave her that
See
quote
that?
before.
I did. I wrote it on my thigh.
James Baldwin said.
Well, I want to end things on this note where we're at a place right now in TV where we're seeing a lot of reboots, prequels, and sequels. If you could sort of travel back 15 years or go forward 15 years with your characters, which would you prefer and why?
Well, if we get to tell our whole story, we will go. I mean, our story doesn't end until we were shooting our pilot. Virginia died just as we were shooting our pilot episode. So the story does go through a huge amount of time. So we are actually having to think about that. I mean, whether we get to tell the whole story, who knows? But if we do, you know, we've had conversations about, well, when do I go bald? When do I go completely white? Well, what are we going to do in the 80s where, you know, me and Lizzie, who plays Virginia, are going to have to be
Right.
old people?
Old
like,
people, yeah.
how's that going to work,
Yeah.
you know? So we do have to think about that.
I think I'd like to go ahead because I think Barb's heart breaks open, and I think she becomes introspective, and I'd like to see where that goes in 15 years. I mean, how do you let go of your hates, and what are you left
Right.
with?
Right. Taraji?
I think the unique thing about Empire is that we do both.
Yeah, we get a lot of
We do
flashbacks.
a lot of flashbacks, and we do, and that's exciting because it's very rare. I usually have to make the stuff up, but the show kind of helps. You know, the show kind of helps with backstory when we have those flashbacks. So I'm interested in doing more, especially Cookie. What was it like? It's 17 years in prison. What did it do to her? Did it change? How did it change her? Of course it changed her. How did it change her? And how did she survive? And how the hell did she come out still looking so good? And did she have a girlfriend?
Oh, that's a good
It's
question.
a lot of unanswered questions. I would like to do more of the, you know, the past stuff. Yeah.
I think I'd like to go back because that would be 2000, and I'd love to see how Eli coped with George Bush and the president. That would be fascinating. Yeah, I like to seeing him when he's. I think everyone does when he's facing adversity and sort of kind of ideological contrast with his own. So that would be a big one.
Sissy, you also get flashbacks, but they're more fleeting in Bloodline.
Yeah, we go back and we go forward
Yeah.
all the time, like Taraji said, their show does. So I think I'd like to go back to just see what it was that I did that so terribly messed up my children.
Too, yeah. Exactly. Well, you guys, thank you so much for taking the time. It was
Oh,
great.
it's over? I want
Over.
to talk some more.
Let's do it. You guys can ask each other questions now, I feel. Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.